For you, Madam Chair, the meeting is live.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, so we're going to call this meeting of the Community and Infrastructure Services Committee to order. So I'll begin with just stating that due to COVID-19 restrictions, in-person delegations are just not feasible at this time. Members of the public are invited to participate electronically in future meetings by contacting delegation@kitchener.ca to register as a delegation or submit written comments. Members of the public are invited to view meetings electronically by accessing the meeting live streams at kitchener.ca/watchnow. So do I have a mover for the consent items? Moved by Councillor Johnson, seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. Any comments or questions? Councillor Gazzola.
Yes, I have a number of questions.
Which one or ones?
I had a question on almost every one.
Okay, so being moved by Councillor Gazzola to move the consent items into discussion. All in favor? All right, that passes. Sorry, all opposed? It passed because we did have at least 2/3. All right, so Councillor Gazzola, go ahead.
Yeah, on the first one, and I'm unable to get the agenda up here, but I have some notes. It's on page 7, table 2. They're showing figures for water usage for 2021 and 2020, and the figures are almost exactly the same. I'm just questioning the reliability of those figures. In 22 million cubic meters, there's only a difference between the 2 years of 3,000 cubic meters. Are those figures correct?
Okay, do we have an answer for that? Mismake.
Through the chair. Yes, so when we looked at those figures, that definitely jumped out at us as well. But when you look at the monthly amounts, some months are a lot higher and some are a lot lower. So the figures were correct. It is a coincidence, and I haven't seen it as long as I've been doing these reports, but yes, they are correct.
All right, good catch, Councillor Gazzola. Thanks for checking into that.
I wonder if I can also ask staff, it's a very, very lengthy report with a tremendous amount of detailed information. Can they just, in 20 words or less, just give us what the highlight of the whole thing is, or are there any problems or any issues?
Mismake.
Through the chair, I think the important things are that we are in compliance with regulatory requirements. We meet all the things we need to do. When we have an adverse water quality incident, we resolve it by doing what we need to do. We flush and resample. So I would say it's a good news story. The inspector hasn't seen anything unusual. We're in compliance.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, great. On 2.2, environmental assessment addendum.
Yeah, I was curious as to why this only refers to Ward 4. I don't quite understand it. Why it isn't a study of the entire city, or if someone could just explain that a little further.
Yeah, I believe it was focused just on the Schneider Creek entrance to the Grand River, but maybe Mr. Lamb can help us understand a little better.
Thanks for the question, and through you, Chair. Yes, that is correct. The study is focused, or sort of the addendum is focused solely on the the Schneider Creek at this time. And it's an addendum to the original stormwater master plan. That stormwater master plan did include a series of projects in there, but this addendum includes the areas of the secondary priority that weren't included in the original master plan. Thanks.
What is the purpose of that study?
So in the original master plan, it identified some preferred solutions for us to address some of the priority sub-watersheds. Some of the areas within those sub-watersheds were not identified with with preferred options for remediation or for remedial works. As part of that approval for our EA, we were informed or required to monitor those sites. And if those sites there became an option or an opportunity for us to address those sites, that we would address that through an addendum to the EA. So this is the administrative requirement for us to include those projects and include some work on those projects.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on 2.2 from others? I should ask, does anyone else have questions about any of the consent items? Okay. Councillor Cazzola, back to you. Naming of a private street?
Yeah, I am surprised after what we seem to be going through here in this day and age that we're not spending a little more consideration or time on the naming of these streets. What's going to happen 50 years from now? They'll say those names came up and nobody said a word. So what? I'm surprised that it's, and I was curious also as to why there weren't any Indigenous names put forward. It just, I hear that it's just a consent item. We don't even get to talk about it. So just a question.
We do get to talk about it because you've brought it forward. So you're asking that question of staff?
Yes, or whoever is the guru that comes up with these decisions.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the chair. And so these are private street namings. These aren't city streets. There is a municipal register of potential city streets that when a municipal road is named, it gets selected through that. But when private streets come forward, the applicant submits the listing of names and we review it with the other agencies to see if it's in conformity with our street naming.
So is this a condominium corporation that we're dealing with?
Yes, through the chair. So the staff report does identify that these are private streets within a private development. And so the naming of roadways allows them to not have to have a fire route sign at the entrance and allows for easier fire access and coordination with our fire department.
Okay, I'm sorry for taking the time up. I thought they were city streets. So yeah.
That's okay. All right, next. Do you have any other questions from any consent items, Councillor Cazzola?
I wanted to briefly ask on 2.5, we've got a whole thing on traffic and bylaw changes. Is there anything that stands out there that should be underlined or?
Okay.
I've tried.
Thanks, Mr. McCrimmon Jones.
Through the chair to the councillor, these bylaw changes are to bring our uniform traffic bylaw in line with initiatives previously approved by council. Those initiatives being the neighborhood speed limit project approved in 2021 and the automated speed enforcement launch, which is being run by the region, which was approved by our council in 2020.
Okay.
So in other words, council's made all those decisions in the past period, and now you're just changing the legal documents. Is that correct?
Through the chair, that's correct. And we worked extensively with our legal counsel to ensure the consistency and the appropriateness of the language in the bylaw.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Is that all on that one, Councillor Cazzola?
Yes, on
Okay.
that one, yes.
Okay, so I see a question from Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marshall. On this as well, I know in this report, it does mention that the ASCs are being used for school zones. Will we have the opportunity in the future to have them used outside of school zones on residential streets?
Through the chair to the councillor, currently the bill and the legislation only allows the use of ASE in school zones and community safety zones. The city is part of a broader group of municipalities working with the MTO and the Ministry of Attorney General, advocating to move ASC enforcement to an AMPS program that would allow the city to enforce speeding tickets through ASC through our own system versus requiring provincial court office, which would then allow us to expand the program within more of our own control.
Oh, that's really great news. Thanks for that.
So further to that, Mr. McCrimmon-Jones, are you saying that automated speed enforcement, which is ASE for members of the public who aren't familiar with the term, that automated speed enforcement cannot be enforced through our own municipal program yet, but can you remind us of the timeline of when we're hoping that it will be opened up?
The ASC working group, Automated Speed Enforcement Working Group, they hope to see that legislation in front of the province this summer. And we are following that timeline closely. And we've started working internally with our bylaw and legal and IT groups. So we're prepared to explore that more meaningfully once the legislation has passed.
Okay, super. Thank you. All right, Councillor Gazzola, back to you. Any further questions?
Yeah, there's on the funding with the province, there's a schedule, and it has it's detailed, some detailed information as to inquire, and it may be just a mistype. They have headings of 2019, 2020, and 2020 again. I take it that one of those should be 2021?
Let's ask staff. Ms. Farrell? Yep.
Through the chair, it's Chris Sparrow speaking. Yes, that should be 2021. Thank you.
Okay, and just another question on this whole issue. How does this fit in? We're dealing with about $450,000 a year. How does that fit in to your budget? Is that shown as a grant and as in and out, or?
Through the chair, yes. Well, we deliver 2 programs through that project, and we get disbursements from the province every 6 months. So it covers mainly staff expenses.
Now, is there any City of Kitchener money included in that?
Through the chair, the City of Kitchener money is deemed as mostly in-kind money for this project. So for the use of our space and equipment and so on.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Johnston and seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor for the consent items? And that passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, next up we have 2 discussion items before us today. The first one being the Corporate Climate Action Plan, progress update, next steps, and closeout. And I'll call on Mr. Reedman, the General Manager of Development Services, to provide an introduction.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. And it's my pleasure to introduce Anna Marie Cipriani, who's our new Corporate Sustainability Officer, and she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience in sustainability-related work, having worked in the municipal sector for a number of years and is a registered professional planner in Ontario as well. And so with that, I will pass over to Anna Marie for her presentation.
Thanks, Justin. Alrighty, so we'll walk us through our Corporate Climate Action Plan and a progress update, closing the plan out with FCM, who is here today to honor that recognition and describe for you some next steps. Next slide, please. Alrighty, so I want to provide some initial context for us all today about corporate and community GHGs. And we'll walk through our core CAP, as you often hear the Corporate Climate Action Plan described. We'll talk about our progress, and I'll highlight for you some particular projects. And I'd like to take us to look at some next steps, and then with FCM here today, close out some of that work. Slide. All right, so we have been working as a municipality through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Partners for Climate Change program, and they have a milestone framework, and that milestone framework supports us in both our community scope greenhouse gas emissions as well as our corporate scope greenhouse gas emission work. When we look at the services we deliver to the community, by nature of the work we do, we create corporate greenhouse gas emissions. When we look at those greenhouse gas emissions, we come to understand that we as an organization account for approximately 3% of the whole picture of community greenhouse gas emissions across our community. So we have our core CAP, what focuses on a plan for reducing our corporate GHGs. And as you remember, in the spring, we had Transform WR. And that is a comprehensive plan of how we will, as a community, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And there are some pointed things, some very strong framework and strategic work and technical work that has been done. And council has unanimously, and all 8 councils across our community have unanimously supported this Transform WR. And in particular, there are strategies that are identified, there are actions. And we have been charged as a municipality with 50 of those actions. This is really part of the next step of work that we will begin to really bring into the organization and to our work, these actions. Next slide. Okay, so let's look for a moment at our corporate greenhouse gas emissions. So we do work, right? We deliver core services to the community and we create greenhouse gas emissions. When we look at those emissions, we can see that there are 5 corporate focus areas. We can also see from this pie graph that both our buildings and our fleet contribute greatly, right, to the overall picture corporately of our greenhouse gas emissions. So they are the greatest emitters, and so it is. What I do want to describe today as well is that as an organization, we had a target of 8% greenhouse gas emission reductions for our corporation, for our organization. We met that target. We met the target 6 years ahead of schedule and exceeded our target by 12%. And so this is something that is noteworthy. I do also want to point to the fact that every aspect of everything anyone has done over the last 2 years has been impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. And our GHGs are likely no different. In general, GHGs for any organization have shifted. They have increased or been avoided. And so there will be lessons to be learned from COVID-19 and its impact on our operations. And we will take those as we move forward on this climate action work. Next slide. All right, I want to now look at 3 different focus areas across our organization and look at 3 programs or 3 actions and projects in particular. So in the first grouping of photos, on the right, you see some heat pumps. And then what we know about heat pumps in general is that they are very effective ways of, for instance, heating facilities. So these heat pumps are in existence in our facility, in one of them anyway. What I observe is that not only are we putting in really effective and efficient methods or equipment, we are seeking to go that next step. And this project is an illustration of that. So these things that you see on the wall in the left photo are variable frequency drives. And so what these do, what this project did, was enable the organization to bring in an effective and efficient technology, heat pumps, and then with the variable frequency drives, make those heat pumps work on demand and only as needed. So this is the type of efficiency that we're really seeking. In the second grouping of photos, you will see fleet and handheld equipment. And so obviously there is a focus on electrification. These photos are images of electrified fleet and handheld equipment. What I observe across the organization, I think that's noteworthy in my early days here, is a level of commitment and collaboration that's really noteworthy and really supportive to the work that we need to do to begin to really move forward. In the fleet and equipment procurement process, I want to note a systemic change that is present and a key ingredient to the type of changes that we're likely going to be involved in to move this work forward. As each piece of equipment or fleet is assessed to be renewed or replaced, the assessment includes, can it be electrified? These are important questions to be asked, and questions to be asked in a systemic way across the organization. This is starting to happen. In the last grouping, or the third grouping of photos, it's a project you're likely quite familiar with. It's our LED Cobra Head Streetlight Conversion Program or project. This project for Kitchener was completed in 2017. And so one of the things I want now to be able to look back and see is that this project was quite a winner. And we're seeing within that street lighting focus area for our organization, a 69% decrease in our greenhouse gas emissions in that focus area. Slide, please. All right, so the Sustainability Office over the next coming months and this coming year, we're really going to continue to support project level work that needs to happen across the organization, and we will work to support and accelerate that work. With regards to greenhouse gas emissions reporting, we have both mandated and voluntary reporting. And so what I hope to do over the coming months is to really streamline that reporting and ensure that it's robust and that it aligns across the organization. So we will really turn our attention to that. And then we begin to initiate the next generation of core cap while we are doing this work. So we will begin to really in earnest incorporate those Transform WR framework actions. We'll begin to do a lot of technical analysis to be able to identify the corporate pathways and resourcing that will be needed to achieve the goals that we have and will set. So as we begin to launch the next generation corporate climate action plan, we will do so in the new term of council. So we will work to begin that in 2023. Together, we can build an interim target for 2026 and work towards that first target of 2030. And we will do this work with the new term of council and alongside the strategic plan work. So with that, that really is a recap of what has transpired under our current corporate climate action plan and a snapshot of the work that is yet to come together. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Ms. Cipriani. So I see we have some hands up and I'll take note of who they are. And then I'd like to ask you to put your hands down until we hear from our delegates, and then we'll come back to you. So first we have Ms. Angelina Jordano from Federation of Canadian Municipalities. Oh, and together with Adler Gross from ICLEI
Canada. Hi, everyone. My name is Angelina Jordano. Could you please, thank you, share the slides. I'm the Capacity Building Officer for the Partners for Climate Protection program. I'm joined with my colleague, Adler Gross from ICLEI Canada. I represent the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and it is my honor today to congratulate the City of Kitchener on their milestone achievements with the Partners for Climate Protection program. Next slide, please. So before I present the two awards that I'm here today to present to the City of Kitchener, I wanted to briefly explain what these awards mean and what the Partners for Climate Protection framework really encompasses and all of the work that the City of Kitchener has accomplished over these past years. So the very first milestone is the basis, which is creating a greenhouse gas emissions inventory and business as usual forecast. That moves you into the second milestone, which is setting a greenhouse gas emissions reduction target. And as Ms. Cipriani said, and which is an amazing accomplishment, the City of Kitchener not only set a greenhouse gas emissions reduction target of 8%, but they surpassed this target and reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by 20% ahead of schedule. And they did this by going through milestone 3 and milestone 4 of the program. So milestone 3 is where you create a climate action plan to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And then milestone 4 is where you put that plan into action and implement the plan. And that's the first award that I will be presenting the City of Kitchener with today. And then the 5th milestone, which is the main award for the Partners for Climate Protection program, is to monitor the impact. So to take all of your progress and create another greenhouse gas emissions inventory to compare to see whether or not you achieved the reduction goal that you set out. And in the case of the City of Kitchener, you not only achieved it, but you surpassed it. So I really congratulate the City of Kitchener on this wonderful achievement. And then we encourage the City of Kitchener to go through the milestone framework again to advance their commitment to climate action. And the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, along with ICLEI Canada, we're partners with you in this work. So we provide free support at every step of the process to municipal staff and elected officials to help further that commitment. The Federation of Canadian Municipalities sees that the Government of Canada wants to increase ambition with respect to climate change, and will just be alongside as your partners throughout this process. Next slide, please. So here is the first award that I'm presenting the City of Kitchener today. Congratulations. This is the award for milestone 4, which is the implementation of your climate action plan. And without further ado, next slide, please. I have the honor of presenting the final award of the Partners for Climate Protection program, the Milestone 5 award for monitoring the progress of your plan. And all 5 colors of this leaf have been filled in to signify that the City of Kitchener has accomplished all 5 milestones of the Partners for Climate Protection program. So congratulations again, City of Kitchener. This is a huge milestone achievement, and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, along with ICLEI Canada, are very, very proud. And the City of Kitchener is joining a community of over 450 municipalities who are members of the Partners for Climate Protection program. And you're one of the climate leaders in this space. So congratulations, this is great. And I hope to be able to help you in your further work.
Thank you so much. Mr. Gross, did you have anything you also wanted to add?
No, I'll just be here on hand for questions afterwards.
Oh, terrific. Okay, thank you so much. Do we have any questions of the delegations? Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, and thank you to both Angelina and Adler for joining us at today's meeting and to share this exciting piece of news. I think over some time as a city, we have recognized, as have our residents, the priority of dealing with sustainability, the priority of dealing with climate change. We know, whenever we've done quantifiable surveys every 4 years with our surveying partners like Environics, the environment has always come up as one of the top 2 priorities of residents in our community. And I think today's achievements that are being recognized by FCM certainly reflect the importance that this council has put on this issue, as well as previous councils, as well as the importance that our community puts on it. I know, FCM obviously plays a very important role in this work, together with ICLEI, for municipalities across Canada, and we look forward to continuing to work with our partners locally as we embark on achieving the and meeting our commitments, both as a city, as a region, and ultimately as a country to the Paris Agreement. So thank you to both of you for coming forward.
Yes, thank you so much. This has been really exciting to see the progress. When we talk about climate change, one of the problems in making it exciting to people is that progress can be quite slow. And so, but to see here today that when we put our minds to it and when we have expertise to rely on in looking at our best bets for next steps, then we do see the results. And so that is encouraging and helps us to be hopeful for the next steps. So we've been asked by staff to take a moment for a photo op so that this can be shared, because it's not quite the same without being in person, right? We don't have the award in our hands to pass around, but we're going to do a photo op instead. So can I call on staff who've been involved in this to please turn their cameras on? And
Also,
yes.
Chair, would you like to share the slide with the award for the photo op?
Well, we could try that, but we can't all fit on one.
No, Councillor Marsh, it'll work actually.
Great.
If
Yes.
you do it.
Let's do it.
Oops.
Who's going to be able to do that for us?
Just give me one moment. I'm just having one quick technical difficulty.
No problem, Madam Clerk. Take your time.
I also want to mention that this is the first time that we're presenting the digital version of the award. So it's a special moment for the Partners for Climate Protection Program and the City of Kitchener, because the design of the award is brand new. So this will be the first photo opportunity with the new award.
Okay, great. So I am going to trust that whoever's taking the photo can see all of us, because I cannot. I guess we can slide it over. There we go. Who is able to take this photo, Madam Clerk? Is that you doing that?
Through the chair, I believe it is a member of staff.
Okay, terrific. So if that person can tell us when to actually smile and pose, that would be helpful. There's Sam. I'm glad you turned your camera on.
I'll be taking it if everyone wants to turn their camera on, who looks like everyone has cameras on, and we'll do, let me pull it up.
Do a couple takes, right, Samantha?
Sure thing, let's do it. Okay, we'll try doing one now, so smile, please. Okay, I'll save that. And then we'll try again, so smile.
So climate protection.
Climate protection.
Let me save that one too.
All right.
And
Did you get us? Oh, one more?
One more for good luck, I guess, yeah. Okay, let me take you. And 1, 2, 3, smile. Great, thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you very much. And I want to take this opportunity to not only thank those who are giving us this award, but also thank you so much to all the staff who've really pushed this agenda forward and helped us to achieve these amazing targets. Thank you, Ms. Cipriani, and thank you, Ms. Tavener. And we would be remiss if we did not also acknowledge the contributions of previous staff who worked on this as well, Ms. Bennett. So thank you to everyone who made this possible, and let's keep this up. Let's go. Let's keep being ambitious. Thank you very much. All right, but we're not done, because we haven't moved it and we haven't discussed it or asked questions of staff. So for those who had their hands up before, please go ahead and queue back in. And we're going to start with Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Chair Marsh. Thanks, Anne Marie, for your presentation. My question is related to, since we had such great success in achieving, being 6 years ahead of our reduction in greenhouse gases and being, I thought, 20% higher than the goal that we're looking at achieving. Moving forward, or do we look like, are we looking at, did we underestimate our capacity to reduce our greenhouse gases, or are we going to take that into consideration when we move forward with the next iteration?
Thank you, Councillor. And through you, the chair. At the time when this target was established, it was considered achievable and ambitious. So achievable and ambitious in the context of the community that we found ourselves in and within the organization. But what we're seeing in this climate action work is that the generations of work are rapidly moving forward and the commitments need to be deeper. And so that's what is being beckoned of us in this next core cap work. And so I hope that answers your question, but for sure, it needs to likely be more ambitious, achievable, and well-grounded in an analysis of what's possible.
Okay. Could technology be a factor in why we were able to achieve, like newer technologies, that we were able to achieve our goal quicker?
I mean, you can see that, the organization is implementing technologies that are supportive to greater levels of efficiencies. The transformations that are being asked of any municipality, I think they go beyond technology, and they are very much systemic changes that need to happen. But not only, within our organization, in organizations, across, in particular municipalities. So we're not alone in what's coming or what's needed.
Okay. Thanks, Anne Marie, and welcome to the team. And Chair Marsh, when the time's appropriate, I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. So I have a couple questions first and then a comment, but my questions are, does the Transform Waterloo Region 50 by 30 resolution that was tagged on when we were looking at the community climate action plan, does that also apply to the corporate climate action plan?
Sure, through you, Chair. So, a big body of work was done to identify those pathways and the targets. So technical analysis was done at the time by Walter Fady, and particularly with the corporate's community scope in mind. So the question that is before us as we move forward is, okay, likely at minimum, we need to reach for that target for our community, but we recognize it's likely a minimum. And so the work that is to come in the coming months will be to assess the pathway to that in order to achieve it. And this is the part of building on a body of work that has already been done and was well grounded in the science of the time. And so that will be part of the intention of the work as we move forward through the next core cap, is to build on that work and make it right for our organization and work towards targets that will work for us, that are achievable and that push us.
So you're saying that yes, the 50 by 30 does apply to the corporate?
The 50 by 30, as it was approved across all 8 councils, was specifically in that community scope. What municipalities were charged with, and our municipality in particular, was charged with 50 different actions. So that's what we are definitely embedding into the organization, is those 50 actions. But those targets are very good guideposts to get a sense of, us as an organization within that region-wide picture.
Okay, I'm still just, are we applying it to the corporate climate action plan? Yes. Okay.
It will be something that we begin to evaluate. So when we do the technical analysis, we're going to look at different targets, in terms of what will work. But that target was not specifically adopted as our corporate target. It was identified as our community target. But there is, when there is good work happening on the same topic, right? And the transformations and modeling that happened, there's likely some wisdom in building on that work. And so that's what we will begin to really assess over the coming months.
Okay, because I think it would be really important to keep that in mind, right, as we move forward. Also, when we talk about the 20% reduction in emissions, does that and this might be a weird question, but does that include the emissions that, like when we talk about the emissions that the city emits, greenhouse gas emissions coming from the corporation, does that take into or factor into account the emissions that are come out of the manufacturing of, say, the material that's gone into the front patio area at City Hall, for example? So for the manufacturing of all of that material, we have emissions, right? So is that factored into our bottom emissions line? If that makes sense.
Thanks for the question through you, the chair. So I think what you're describing is what might be called embodied carbon. So the carbon that, in a sense, greenhouse gas emissions that we don't see when we build something new or purchase a product. And so specifically embodied carbon is not, identified as a direct greenhouse gas emission. It's not something that in the frameworks that there are that we're specifically accounting for. But across this work, there's more discussion about embodied carbon, and more understanding is starting to emerge with what can we do about it? What is our responsibility? And so that's, part of the questions where it's really, this work is daunting, it's vast, and there's a huge amount of urgency. So I think for municipalities, what's really important is to assess what is within our scope of influence. So some of that will be directly in our operations, the materials we choose to use in a project, for instance. And then there may be some advocating, at other levels of government, et cetera, right? To speak to some changes that may need to be happening. But we need to stay very focused on what is within our core business and what's possible for us to make changes to, and being very strategic about the actions we take, because this work is urgent. We don't have time to waste, or energy to waste for that matter. Thank you for the question.
Good. I have one more question. Do I have time, or should I keep back in?
Yeah, if it's a quick one.
Well, I think it's quick. I mean, it has to do with the electrifying the fleet, which I think is a wonderful idea. But of course, when we electrify a fleet, that means we're disposing of already existing vehicles. So how does that, what does that do when we look at greenhouse gas emissions? Like, are we, by producing and manufacturing more fleet items or more vehicles, do we ensure that they are at their life end before that we replace them with those electrified vehicles, or how is that processed?
So I see Mr. Reedman has clicked in.
And I may just answer this because it's outside of the Corporate Sustainability Office in terms of our fleet replacement cycle. And so our fleet team does look at the lifespan of the vehicle utilization, the maintenance aspects in relation to the age of the vehicle, and do a cost benefit analysis to see where that vehicle is in its life cycle at the City of Kitchener before it's replaced. And so our average lifespan for vehicles is about 10 years for sort of the small utility vehicles, I guess, or personal, not personal vehicles, but the, like the building inspectors and things like that. And so they look at that and then look at, auctioning off or selling those vehicles at the end of their lifespan. So they don't go direct to the scrapyard, but they are beyond the lifespan for our use and the reliability that we have as our standard.
Okay, thank you. I'll have comments later. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, next is Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, Anna Maria, I want you to go back to your talk, and you mentioned that the city accounts for only 3% of our goals here. I gather the rest of the community accounts for 97%. How are we doing with that end of the task?
Through you, Chair Marsh. So indeed, I mean, we are taking responsibility for that approximate 3%. As a comparison, Waterloo is approximately 2%, being a smaller municipality, a smaller organization. So the work that we have done takes responsibility for our scope of influence. And also the work that we have ahead of us is going to be taking that focus on the 3%. Also, we are participating in Climate Action Waterloo Region. So we have our own house, in a sense, to get in order in those efforts, but we are also there as a strategic partner for the community as we work through Climate Action Waterloo Region to also support that 97% and the ways in which, our work influences the way in which greenhouse gas emissions evolve across our community, the choices that our community members make, et cetera.
Can you list a couple of things that we're doing to help with the 97%?
Let's see. Yeah, so I think, let's see, what shall we describe? So one, as I've described, is the Climate Action Waterloo Region plan. If we look at how municipalities make impact, so any of these, the work that's coming out of planning, for instance, the work that comes out of planning influences how people choose, where they choose to live, how they move about our community. So how we design a community has impact. Our snow clearing operations have impacts on how people move around our community. So throughout the entire organization, how we do our daily operations, the policies we set into place, it's said, through FCM that municipalities impact directly and indirectly approximately 50 to 60% of emissions. So those types of decisions that you deal with, on a weekly and monthly basis have those impacts. Many of those are in policy. And so, those are some of the ways. I hope that gives you some tangible examples of how we, work in our own business across the org and how we partner across our community to make, dents on the work that we need to do.
Yeah, to fulfill our goals, we're given grants from other levels of government to help us. Are we doing anything to give assistance to the population, to the 97% in the same manner? Are we doing anything along those lines?
So through the chair for this question, indeed, so some of those granting agencies, we can take NRCan as an example. They had a program called ZVIP where we look at electrical vehicle, charging infrastructure. While those grants, for instance, have been offered to municipalities, they've also have been offered to private sector organizations as well. So, to the extent that the municipality may have a scope of influence, likely there are larger scopes of influence at other levels of government. And we are starting to see, those types of grants and many of them rolling out, not only to support municipal sector emissions, but also the community scope emissions as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Gazzola. Councillor Davey, do you still have questions?
I'm good, thanks. Okay.
All right. So, I'll just ask my own. So, Ms. Cipriani, so would we also say that as the city is one of the funders for REAP, which is a small, modest grant, would you say that that's also helping us to help the 97% in the programs that they offer to the community?
Yeah, so primarily the work that we do with REAP is really focused very much on adaptation. And so in that way, it's likely more focused on the work that we need to do at adaptation in our community as opposed to mitigation. But yes, those are the types of strategic partnerships and funding that the city does provide to enable partners in making headway in their scope as well. And also to help us in turn make progress, on our own goals.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. Thank you very much. And the 50 by 30 targets, what baseline year are they using? Is it 2016 like ours?
It's 2010. Yeah,
that's what I thought.
Yeah, it's 2010.
Okay. And so, so our goals were even more ambitious than 2010 levels. Is that correct?
Yes, I would say there's significant GHG reductions that happened between 2010 and 2015. And so yes, 2016, my understanding was chosen for the organization as a baseline because it had the most comprehensive data. And so different municipalities, across our community have different baselines as well. But yes, for the community scope emissions, we're looking at a 2010 baseline.
Okay, and so when we create our next iteration of the plan next year, Will it be appropriate for us to outline that difference and make sure that everyone's on the same page about which target we're hoping to achieve based on which baseline?
Yeah, that will be part of the work, that comes, that we make sure that we have an understanding and that we pave really, or not pave so much, but find the best path forward.
Yeah, we have to come up with some new lexicon, right? Okay, great. Thank you so much. All right, so there don't appear to be any further questions. Thank you again to staff and to our delegates for coming forward. It's been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Do we have any comments? Councillor Ioannidis, since you're moving it, I'll let you go last, if you like. All right, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. First, I'd like to also commend staff for all the work that's been put into reducing our city's greenhouse gas emissions. I'm pleased to see we've exceeded our internal goals, but I do believe that the real work is only just beginning. I think it's good to have a plan, but now we have to put that into action. In keeping with our commitment to transform Waterloo Region, our goal as a community, I think, is a 50% reduction of greenhouse gases by 2030, which at the corporate level will require us to rethink our daily operations and continually challenge the status quo. So I look forward to the continued work with all of our community partners and to build on this momentum. So thank you, everyone, for the work that's being put into this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Davey.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to take a quick opportunity because this is an issue that's, well, I know it's very important to all of us. But yeah, I do also want to acknowledge the work of staff on this, getting us ahead of our target. At the same time, like Councillor Chapman, almost issue a bit of a warning in that, not to take away from the work that was done, but a lot of the low-hanging fruit, I think it's really been taken on this in terms of things like the streetlights. Like it was a lot of money, but it also had a payback. It didn't hurt. It not only did not hurt, it actually repaid us in terms of our investment. It's going to be, I think, much more challenging going forward. And the part that makes me uneasy as well is I think we're really relying on a lot of improvements and even breakthroughs in technology to be able to hit the targets that we see going forward. And it's going to be a real challenge for us. I mean, most notably things like home heating. To my knowledge, there is no, reasonably affordable alternative for someone to replace their gas-powered furnace at this point. So things like that are going to require a tremendous amount of work from both us at our level as well as the province and the federal level as well if we want to hope to hit the targets that we all think are important.
All right, thanks very much. Councillor Ioannidis, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Marsh. Just want to thank our delegations for attending and their presentation and the awards for us. I take these awards very seriously, particularly when it comes to sustainability. So really appreciate you attending and honoring us with these awards. I wanted to thank our staff and as well as council, and these numbers that we achieved, even though they're 6 years ahead and a lot higher in our greenhouse gas reductions, like 20%, is really a testament to our commitment to being a more of a sustainable community. And I agree with some of the comments. The next phase is going to be a little bit more difficult, but I think we're up to the task.
Thank you so much. Okay, Ms. Jordano, sorry.
Jordano.
Jordano, thank you.
Through the chair, I just wanted to end by reiterating some of the supports that the Partners for Climate Protection program offers. So as you were saying, you want to further your commitment to climate action, and we provide capacity building support for municipal staff and elected officials to look at other municipalities across the country, what they're doing, how they're reducing greenhouse gas emissions to help spark ideas for what kinds of projects you can do at the City of Kitchener. And we also provide technical trainings and one-on-one coaching and different guidebooks that are available on our website to help with these different goals. And also through the PCP program, you're connected to a network of over 450 municipalities. So you're not alone in this work, and everyone is increasing their ambition with respect to climate change. And the City of Kitchener is a leader in that. So we're here to support you in your efforts. And thank you again for having my colleague Adler and I to present you with this important award.
Okay, thank you so much. That's great. So so now this report has been moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. All right, next up we have the Housing for All program update. Mr. Andrew Ranserup, Social Planning and Affordable Housing Program Lead, will be able to provide us with a 5-minute PowerPoint presentation. And it's already up. Wonderful. Welcome, Mr. Ranserup.
And thank you so much. So good afternoon, Chair Marsh and members of the committee. So for those members of the public who don't know who I am, my name is Andrew Ranserup and I am the City's Social Planning and Housing Program Lead. So I always invite folks to reach out to me if you have any questions or you want to connect either by phone or by email. And this program update is Housing for All's year 1 program update. So it's the first year. It's really about setting the foundation for moving forward successfully. So this brief presentation will highlight the achievements and what we hope to work towards as a city on the affordable housing portfolio locally. It also satisfies the action in the strategy to report on progress, success, and the challenges in implementing it. Next slide, please. So I just want to provide some background as to the priorities that we set in the 44 actions. But I just wanted to also point out that in the background here, you can see an updated photo of the YW Blockline site that was taken by me last week. So you can see that the project is really moving forward and it's really exciting. So next slide, please. So approved by Council in December of 2020, and it has received AMO's PJ Marshall Municipal Innovation Award. Housing for All is a Made in Kitchener plan to help support the region in ensuring everyone has a place to call home. It contains 44 actions under 7 key priority areas. And it is the city's plan to focus on addressing the issues of housing homelessness locally, but also working towards more equitable outcomes for individuals who are the most vulnerable, and our shared goal of implementing the right to housing and building a more caring community. Next slide, please. So just as a reminder, I'm not going to go through each one of these, but these are the 7 key priority areas. And these areas have positioned us as a city to collaborate within the corporation, pan-regionally, as well as in some cases even nationally, to advance our housing and homelessness priorities. Further, these actions have allowed us to forge ahead on our own internal goals of equity, diversity, and inclusion, acknowledging that housing is a foundation to well-being. Next slide, please. So what we have achieved so far. So this photo on the screen is move-in day for the Better Tent City pilot program. Next slide, please. So focusing on the completed actions. So you can see that the list is long and I won't go through each one of them, but it is incredible to note that the city has been able to make progress on nearly 50% of the 44 actions in its first year. And about 30% of those 44 actions have seen either completion or significant work applied in the area. It is important to note that many of these actions do not have finite endings and are iterative. I just want to point the committee towards the 3rd action on the list, which has a number of key actors locally who want to develop housing. Nearly all of these projects are currently under development, such as the one I showed you before, which is the YW, which is nearing completion. I think this speaks volumes to the intergovernmental and agency cooperation, as well as the hard work of Kitchener staff across the corporation in coordinating tight timelines, piloting innovative solutions, and being open and ready to creating more housing opportunities. Next slide, please. So about 18% of the actions for Housing for All are currently in progress. These actions will be added to the 2022 to 2023 Housing for All work plan. The full list of actions in progress can be found in the report appendix for your reference. Next slide, please. So what we plan to achieve. So this is an update photo sent to me by Sandy Dietrich Bell of One Roof. So you can see that project is moving ahead as well on Sheldon Ave. So next slide. In addition to the actions currently underway, 7 actions that are shown on the slide here will be added to the 2022 to 2023 work plan. And just to stress that this list was created in collaboration with internal city stakeholders. So everyone had a chance to talk about what they can provide in terms of resourcing and things that we could possibly get done in the next year or so. And they will be added in order to leverage other key deliverables and available resourcing as well. Next slide, please. So just reporting on some successes and challenges. So I just wanted to point out that this is the Indwell build site, St. Mark's Place, which will have 43 supportive housing units as well. Next slide. So first to start off on challenges, the state of housing and homelessness. The city has been working really closely with the region in ways that it never has before on this file, as well as local community partners and the other area municipalities in new and innovating and exciting ways. However, there has been an increase in national and local attention on housing and homelessness, with an even more greater desire to end homelessness in our communities. It's fair to say that the cost to rent and own continues to increase year over year, as well as the PIT count, which was performed by the region of Waterloo in 2021, did show that there was 1,085 individuals experiencing any type of homelessness, including 412 who were living completely unsheltered. Just to give some context, in 2018, the PIT count did report that there were 333 people experiencing any type of homelessness. So while there has been methodological changes in how those numbers are counted, it still speaks to the anecdotal evidence that was shown in our needs assessment that homelessness continues to increase and the complexity of that experience as well. In terms of supportive housing, since December of 2020, the city has supported the creation of 128 units of supportive housing. And this is through a mix of financial supports, fee waivers, providing city land, and expedited approvals. And there's approximately about 115 units that are currently in different stages of the development approvals process. That means in our first year alone, we've moved forward on almost 50% of our target of 450 supportive housing units in its first year. And I want to stress that this has a direct impact on lifting individuals out of homelessness. Moving forward to our next key item is the Betterton City Alternative Housing Pilot. Housing for All did position the city to support a Betterton City as a program that filled unique housing gaps in the community, in particular during the COVID-19 pandemic and the increasing presence of unsheltered homelessness. The city's support to offer the temporary use of city land, as well as other resources along with support from the region of Waterloo and WRDSB, which is the Waterloo Region District School Board, and the community has ensured that 50 individuals experiencing homelessness could still have a place to call home. With strong supports and collaboration between Betterton City, the region, and city staff, the site has undergone significant changes, as shown on the screen here. It went from being completely unserviced to having hot showers, washrooms, and laundry facilities, as well as connection to the hydro grid that has made life for the individuals living there much better. Moving on to advocacy. In addition to the units that are slated to be built in Kitchener, it's really important to point out that the city was an early and strong advocate for the House of Friendship shelter care model, which did have a home at one point here in Kitchener, but has successfully found a home in the city of Waterloo. Further, the city was also an early supporter of the KW Urban Native Wigwam project, which was in our housing strategy and has successfully secured funding for an additional housing site in the city of Cambridge. I want to stress that our position to advocate cannot be underestimated and has resulted in greater housing opportunities both within our community as well as pan-regionally. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, the next steps are actions that are ongoing or part of the 2022 to 2023 work plan. They do leverage a number of timely opportunities, such as the expertise of our new realty team, our dedicated staffing to support and streamline affordable housing and purpose-built rentals, which was approved in the 2022 budget, and a recommended policy that will come forward later this year as a result of the $2 million from the 2022 budget process, allocated towards an affordable housing reserve that will help get more affordable and supportive housing units built. And I want to point out here in the background that this is the Working Center site, which they did receive RHI funding for, which will have affordable rental units for racialized folks and newcomers. And I just want to finish off by saying we are so excited to continue this body of work with all of our partners and continue to lay out the blueprint for more care in Kitchener. So on that note, I put it back to you, Madam Chair, for any questions.
Okay, and we do have a number of questions for you. I wonder if we can hold off though, if we should hold off until we hear from our delegation. Would that be helpful? Okay, so Mr. Antwerp, please hold on And I've taken note of who's got their hands up, and so then we'll hear from our delegation, then come back to these 4 councillors and any others. Thank you. All right, so next up we have Mr. David Alton from the Social Development Center, Waterloo Region.
Thank you, Chair and Committee. So I'm the Lived Expertise Facilitator for the Social Development Center, Waterloo Region. And so on the Housing for All strategy, the Social Development Center would like to speak today in support and to encourage Council to continue to prioritize and direct more resources to staff and community initiatives that center lived expertise and that treat housing as a right. In the actions that have already been completed, we can see the importance of community voices in maximizing impact. For example, when it comes to improving the development approval process and combating NIMBYism, folks with lived expertise are advocating for more meaningful, affordable housing that is stable, safe, and long-term. By partnering with affordable housing organizations and housing advocates, the city can redirect community opposition into actual affordable housing while freeing up the development approval process, which I'm sure many of you would appreciate. At the Social Development Center of Waterloo Region, we are actively engaging with these community partners and are preparing more cohesive campaigns to assist the cities in these efforts. Another major area that we want to highlight is the clearing of encampments. This is an issue that is a major concern for the community as it violently forces people into more unstable and unsafe living conditions. It also deteriorates trust with institutions like the city, which makes every other housing project harder. We are happy to see the city advocating to the region and other partners for a human rights-based approach, and would encourage the city to explore ways of continually uplifting community voices and lived expertise in these advocacy efforts. The recent encampment initiative by the region has done neither of these things, and is now facing backlash from frontline organizations and other advocates. Centering lived experience and building trust in communities will ensure that the other actions in the Housing for All strategy can reach their full potential for enabling safe and dignified housing. As a community partner in the development of a lived expertise working group for the City of Kitchener's housing, we are excited to model for council and staff more ethical ways of engaging with community wisdom. The housing advocates who are co-creating this process with us are energized and hopeful that the actions that will come from the city as it opens itself up to better listen and incorporate lived expertise. However, they are also cautious, as to truly incorporate community wisdom will require staff and councillors to open themselves and their processes up in ways they've never done before. Looking at the progress so far, we want to encourage the receptivity and flexibility we are seeing from the Housing for All team. As a community organization, we have had to undergo this transformation ourselves as we center community voices in our operations. Through the Civic Hub project, we have been able to maintain relationships with underrepresented groups and communities, which has made our housing programming more responsive and aware of the on-the-ground impacts of policies and programs. Civic engagement is intimately linked to the concept of social inclusion, and it considers how inequalities in material conditions limit people's ability to participate in traditional engagement processes. The work of social engagement hubs like our Civic Hub and the Lived Expertise Working Group help foster equitable and inclusive engagement and knowledge sharing among communities experiencing different forms of structural marginalization. We are excited for the continued implementation of the Housing for All strategy. The Social Development Center of Waterloo Region has supported both the work of the Mayor's Equity, Diversity, Inclusion Task Force and Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. And we look forward to consolidating connections between these two strategies to create tangible and lasting impacts for the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in our city. As staff move forward, with more resources will be needed to fully incorporate the wisdom of lived expertise into the implementation and evaluation of the strategy. We look forward to continue supporting this work. Thank you for moving forward with this plan, and we're excited to see it continue to develop. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And that was just within 5 minutes. Well done. We have some questions for you. First up is Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Alton, for coming in today and for all the wonderful work that the Social Development Center does. It's wonderful, really. So my question to you is, you mentioned ways to engage with lived experts or experiences and the need for more resources. Can you just elaborate a little bit more on those 2 points?
Yeah, I think, as you can see, there are several actions in the Housing for All strategy that are already starting to move in this direction, both when it comes to reporting and to setting up piloting the lived expertise working group. And we're just, I think, as we move forward, it'll become more and more apparent that this approach needs to be applied across every action and across every, more holistically throughout the organization. And so as we go in that direction and explore more and more opportunities, we want to continue the city to continue to be directing resources in this direction and to be exploring more and more ways to be adding the voices of people with lived expertise, or to be respecting their engagement in the process. So I think it's more just about endorsing this direction and to get counselors and staff thinking that this, how can we take these lessons we're learning along the way and apply them in more and more initiatives when we're doing engagement with the community.
Okay, well, thank you. And when appropriate, I'd like to move this motion, or the review of the motion, or I'm not sure the wording, but anyway, okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll come back to you, Councillor Chapman. I don't know that we have anything to move, I believe it, but I'll confirm with staff. Mr. Alton, just before I move on to the next questions, can I ask you to clarify lived expertise? Are you referring to lived expertise in homelessness specifically?
Yeah, so when we're talking about lived expertise, this is kind of a shift in thinking on how lived experience is held. Usually when we talk about lived experience, we're talking about experience with homelessness, experience with housing instability, experience with kind of various income supports such as like ODSP or OW. These various kind of experiences that people can have that make their engagement with housing more difficult and make their engagement with lots of aspects of a community more difficult. And so the language of lived expertise is to acknowledge that through going through these processes and engaging with, whether it's these various systems from the user level, that gives you a certain degree of wisdom. And we're trying to model what does it look like for the city to, and for other partners to engage with that wisdom in a way that kind of is full of dignity and respect, and holds it at a similar level that we would treat other expertise, such as like academic expertise or business expertise. Okay, there is some kind of wisdom from that.
Yep, I get it. Thank you very much. And I appreciate that strength-based approach. I just wanted to clarify that you were talking about homelessness specifically. So, or I guess poverty, like very severe poverty experiences in particular.
We can have a range that we look at of experiences that we include in it.
Okay, thank you. So next up, we have questions from Mr. Mayor Verbanovic.
Thanks, Councillor Marsh, and thanks, David, for joining us today and being here. And I will echo the comments. Thank you to you and everyone involved with the Social Development Center for the work that you do and assist the city with. I appreciate your presentation and the additional information you provided to Councillor Chapman. I'm just wondering, as we go forward, and there's so many different pieces that we're tackling in terms of the housing file, some which are within our wheelhouse and some that are more regional, provincial, federal, and so on. I guess with the challenges that we're seeing across the country right now, in particular around affordability, is there any particular examples of things that you think we maybe could be advocating for more so, particularly with our provincial and federal partners, in terms of, tackling some of those aspects. I'd be curious to your perspectives on that.
Yeah, obviously right now, one of our areas of focus is on how do we incorporate lived expertise into these processes. But on the other side, we are also looking at what are the best practices with kind of development processes, and what are the best practices with things like inclusionary zoning policies. And when it comes to advocacy, we think that there's the province and the federal government have huge capacities when it comes to capital, comes to financing of affordable housing projects, of non-market housing projects. And this was something that was very common until the 1990s, that the federal government was a major player in funding non-market housing, social housing, supportive housing. So we would really encourage advocacy in that direction to try and get the federal government especially to be a bigger player in the table of funding these non-market housing solutions.
Great, thank you very much. And thanks again. Please pass on our thanks to the rest of the team.
Thanks very much. Next up, we have questions from Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. And David, thank you again for so much for coming in and for your input. Kind of going a little further than maybe the mayor was saying, we know there's an increase in homelessness, and trying to help out with this. What do you see are some of the main causes of homelessness, and where do we have to advocate? What levels of government do we need to advocate with to kind of help maybe before someone becomes homeless?
Yeah, I think kind of building on what I said to Mayor Bogdanovic, there is a huge gap when it comes to the kind of the social supportive housing in being built, being maintained across the country. And so that is a huge element, because those are the people who are most vulnerable to being in a situation of unsheltered or unstable housing. So I really do think that is a big factor. It's just like there's not enough safe and supportive housing. Like when we think of, we are hearing constantly of people in private landlord situations where the maintenance levels are very low and deteriorating, so it's not safe for them to live in their house anymore. We're hearing huge issues around compliance of like standards of living. And so these things all kind of contribute to a lack of making people not feel safe in their own home, making people not have options available. And so I think really advocating for an increase in the development and maintenance of affordable housing, social housing, housing with wraparound supports, because a lot of people do need more supports when it comes to their housing, would be really, really helpful. And then when it comes to more close to home, it's around how do you encourage private landlords to be maintaining their standards of care that is acceptable for housing, and how do you kind of keep them accountable to their kind of obligations to tenants who are in more vulnerable housing situations.
You're touching on some of the supports. So I'm just wondering if we could get some supports to people earlier, could that help them not get into a state of homelessness? Again, I'm trying to say, are there ways to help out before it's critical like this?
Well, the people I'm talking about, like when we talk about social supportive and non-market housing, there is still a range of housing options that are there. It's not just like the shelter system or the initial support system. It is, people who are working minimum wage jobs will never be able to engage in market rent and market rates, right? There are certain limitations that they have. And so when we look at that bottom part of the housing spectrum, there's just a lack of units, and the units that are there, the maintenance and the safety of them is not up to standard. And so that's, and those are the people who very quickly end up falling further and further down because there's not options, and the options they have, they don't feel safe with.
Okay, thank you, David.
Thank you very much. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Chair Marsh, and thank you, Mr. Alton, for coming in today. And I really appreciate your presentation. And I have some lived experience with having lived in a housing co-op before. And I think the model for cooperative housing is actually really, really wonderful. And to kind of piggyback on what Mayor Verbanovic was asking before in terms of, federal and provincial programs, is cooperative housing something that you're advocating for? Is this something that you're looking at?
I mean, cooperative housing is definitely one of the tools that people would be that the federal government was a major player in. If you ever go to the Esplanade area of Toronto, that was a major cooperative housing development that was funded by the federal government in the 70s, and that was part of their vision that they have now moved away from. And so we do think that cooperative is one of the types of tenure that is more accessible and is more permanently affordable. And so we would include that in the kind of housing we encourage you to advocate. I mean, we'll be advocating, but please join us to the federal and provincial partners.
Yeah, thank you. No, I 100% will. I mean, it's such a great model, mixed income community, living with people who are living with disabilities, all different kinds of family structures, and that you'll find in co-op housing. And I don't think that there's been any built to my knowledge, probably since about the mid 1990s. And it would be great to see that again. So I will help you, and we can work on that together. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for bringing that up, Councillor Johnston. I think that's a great idea as well. All right, those are all the questions we have for you, Mr. Alton. And so next we're going to have questions of staff. So we had 4 councillors before: Councillor Schneider, Chapman, Johnston, and Michaud. If you still have questions, please put your hand up. All right, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh, and great report. It's great to see the progress that we're making with affordable housing. But in the report, there's one agency that I didn't notice working with, and maybe we've got some plans in the future, but Habitat for Humanity is one that I feel does great work with family housing. Just saw some great coverage of their project on Keele Street in Kitchener. So wondering if we have plans, or are we working also with Habitat for Humanity for affordable housing?
So through the chair, Habitat for Humanity was actually a partner in the creation of the housing strategy. So they've been there from the beginning, and we always look forward to working with partnerships when they do have projects come forward and there is opportunity for us to support them and leverage them. Of course we will. I believe they were mentioned in Housing for All, so maybe that was just a mistype. But yeah, so Karen Coviello was the co-chair of the advisory committee and was a member of Habitat for Humanity. So we do look forward to working with them on whatever plans and ambitions that they do have for affordable home ownership.
That's great, because I know I really like to see us, we have land like we did with the Y, to have that as a possible option as well. And just one of the things that keeps coming up when we have condo developments is, the developer providing affordable units. In a discussion with Councillor Singh, he brought up a thought of, is it possible for us as a city or the region to maybe work with a developer, and when these are being constructed, look at purchasing units, maybe at cost within these buildings, to provide some affordable housing.
So through the chair, I think that I can take that comment and idea and bring it towards our municipal working group that we have on housing, and we can explore from there how we can best leverage the area municipalities in the region as well in exploring that opportunity.
Yeah, that would be great, because I think, the developers are trying to do what they can, but I think if we can pitch in and as they're building buildings, we get units for affordable housing, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Marsh. My first question has to do with the 7 priorities on page 2. And I was wondering if you could tell me how they tie into planning policies and strategies.
So through the chair, planning policies and strategies, I believe, falls under priority 6. So continuously reviewing the development process was one action that did fall under there. It was a way for us to group together all of the actions that we heard from the public, that we heard from council, and we heard from our advisory committee. So they do all roll up into those 7 key priority areas, but I do believe that planning processes do fall under there, obviously subject to legislative requirements that we have to follow.
Okay. Could you also say that all priorities in one way or another tie into planning strategies, maybe not policies, or should they?
Through the chair, in some ways they all do. So in terms of ending homelessness and seeking supportive housing, of course, we do have to look at streamlining and fast tracking, as we have done with the YW project, as an effective method. When RHI funding comes around and the turnarounds are really tight, it's shown to be effective. And with the 2 new people that were actually provided to the 2022 budget, I think that that's another opportunity for more of that. So I think you're correct in saying that they all do touch on planning processes in ways that we've been piloting new and innovative ways to get these projects moving forward.
Okay, good. My next questions have to do with the table on page 5. These are actions, like in the staff report, right? I don't know, they're not numbered. So if you look down the list of items, I guess it's number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So in item number 4, it says facilitate the creation of 450 units of new transitional and supportive housing. I just wondered if you could tell us how that would be facilitated. Like what's the plan, I guess? This is an action item, right?
Yeah, so through the chair, how the city has been facilitating it is when we are approached by a nonprofit developer, we lend our expertise wherever possible to help them get through the process. We also have been connecting them with community partners as needed. So for instance, if it's the Kitchener-Waterloo Foundation, or whether it's through speaking to somebody at the region, or whether it's looking at what we can do to help the projects move forward. That's kind of how we've decided our role as a city, as a lower tier municipality, could help facilitate those, but also looking at financial ways. So we don't charge application fees to nonprofits, and the potential policy that is coming forward for council's consideration later this year, there could be an opportunity there to address those as well. So in those ways, that's how the city has decided to facilitate, and that's within our mandate as well.
So how is it within our mandate to determine that we need so many units for women, so many units for men, so many units for acute concurrent mental health people, or other challenges? Like, is that within our mandate to say, no, well, we need this rather than that at this point?
So through the chair, those targets were set through pretty deep engagement with a number of community partners. So that's how those numbers came about. We did have direct contact with service providers and people from the community who said, like, this is kind of at that point in time during the needs assessment phase, that's where the shortfalls were. And that's kind of where we decided to set our targets based on what we've heard. That's what we've done.
Yeah, and I'm not questioning the targets. Sorry, I've got construction going on here. I'm not questioning the targets because I think they're very honorable. I just wonder how we can, sort of ensure that those targets are being met. That seems a bit harder to accomplish, but I'm sure you'll figure it out. Next question had to do with the next point, and it talks about below market rental and below market ownership units that we would seek to incorporate in community housing. Can you just elaborate a bit on that? Like, are we talking about attainable rents or attainable ownership? Like, what exactly are we referring to here? And doesn't this sort of go beyond the scope of housing for all?
So through the chair, just for clarifications, are you referring to the identify city land suitable?
Yeah, to find suitable lands. Like, should we not be focusing in on, like, when we're talking about providing lands, city lands, should we not be ensuring that we're focusing on those more supportive housing needs than below market rent, which could mean $10 below market rent? There's really no, it could mean a lot of things, right?
So through the chair, we are undergoing a review process of all the city lands, land disposition strategies. So as we are going through that, we are identifying sites that perhaps may be better for one or the other, but also opportunities for mixed communities, which was something that was identified both here and in our Make It Kitchener 2.0. So in those cases, some financial models would be better suited for more moderate rentals, or there may be opportunities for deeply affordable or supportive, as you've referred to, on certain lands, as we've done on the Blockline site. So it depends on the opportunity, and it depends on, you know, the request for proposals that goes forward. But ultimately it's who's shovel ready, what would be best to complement this site, and what's best for the community on advancing housing here. So those are all the things that go into it. But of course, when those opportunities do come up, everything will be considered on that site.
So can we assume that if it were for supportive housing, the city might consider a donation of the land, whereas if it were just simply below market net rental or below market ownership value, that the city wouldn't be, I mean, it would be land up for sale. Can we make that distinction at least?
So through the chair, that would be an opportunity for council to discuss. I don't think we as staff can make that decision, but I think that when that time comes, there are decisions and recommendations that can be made. You know, there's quite clear disadvantages for nonprofits and supportive housing providers versus more market developers and even acquiring land. So all that will have to be taken into consideration when council makes decisions on this.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, and through you, Chair Marsh and Mr. Ramsberg, thank you so much for your report, and thank you for all the work that has gone into this. I like the creative ways that we are looking at helping with the housing situation from a number of different perspectives, and I think that that's so important. And I wanted to thank you, Councillor Schneider, for bringing up the Habitat for Humanity. I wanted to mention that as well. The more ways that we're looking at doing housing is exactly what we need to do. So this report very much does that as well. I also wanted to ask you the same question, or what I brought up with Mr. Alton as well, and that is about cooperative housing. We haven't seen any new cooperative housing since at least the mid 1990s. It is a supportive mixed income community with so many different people represented in it. And I'm very sad that nothing has happened in a very long time. Is this something that as a council, is this something we should be putting through as a motion? Because I would be happy to work on something like that with you. Or is it something that you and your colleagues are raising with the federal and provincial governments as well?
So through the chair, I think that what this report has shown is that advocacy is very strong, and advocacy from the city can get things done. But also to say that there are a number of avenues that I currently sit on, as well as Mayor Vremenovic as well. So when you look at different ways of, you know, whether it's through CMHC or whether it's through federal housing summits or whether it's through things, these are all things that are coming through when we're looking at, you know, cooperative housing, or we're looking at community housing that is aging in stock and does need to be repaired, or we're looking at even local initiatives that are looking to build cooperative housing in the gaps and securing financing through CMHC. So those conversations are happening with myself and the mayor at the table, but also just to say that advocacy goes a long way, and it's something that the city is well positioned to do. So if it's something that you do wish to work on, I would offer support, but it is happening in both ways, yes.
Yeah, well, thank you, and I appreciate that. So yes, I can take that piece further offline with you. I also liked Councillor Schneider's suggestion. You know, I believe as a council, we have done a lot around housing. There's always so much more to do, but that another creative suggestion about looking at buying housing units, I think makes sense. How do we, because I think this is something that is a question for residents. I mean, the region is basically they're working on housing. We're doing a lot here, as we should be, and we need to be doing more of. What can you maybe better explain? It's a hard question, but the relationship between what they do and what we're doing, and how maybe we work together.
Through the chair, absolutely. So the region is the housing services manager. So there are things that they are required to do in providing community housing, as you may all know. And Housing for All really focuses on what the city can do. So it's not to say that we're working separately. In fact, we are working together on a number of tables. And even when you look at, you know, how can we look at our own fees and policies holistically, it's right now the region is asking us to look at it holistically with their Building Better Futures plan. So these conversations are happening, and we are making the connections of how best can we facilitate their plan to build more housing here, because we know that we can't do it alone, either one of us, and that we are stronger together. So that's how we are working together, and we do continue to work together on multiple fronts.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that that's exactly what the community wants to see us doing. They don't care where it's really coming from. They just want to make sure that we're working together and we're doing our best to try and do some problem solving here. So thank you again. Great report.
All right, thanks very much. That appears to be all the questions we have of you. So it's been moved by Councillor Chapman that Council receive this report, Housing for All Program Update, for information. Any comments? Mayor Verbanovic.
Yeah, just very quickly, I just really want to thank Andrew. It has been primarily Andrew. I know others help him out from time to time in the ongoing work that's being done with respect to the strategy. It's been really important since we first developed that strategy to figure out what's our role in this versus what the role of the region is versus the role of the province and the federal government. And I think we've been very successful at being able to identify that, to be ambitious in terms of what we're trying to achieve, and to be successful in terms of some of the collaborations that we've been able to move forward with, including the kinds of things we're seeing with the YW, with One Roof, with what's happening at St. Mark's and others, in particular in terms of supportive housing, but as well as a number of the other pieces of work that have been identified today. And I think we're continuing to focus in a very significant way on how this is a priority going forward. And so I certainly am pleased to support this, and I think it's something that we as a council should be quite proud of, and continue to see this move forward with a certain amount of vigor in the months ahead. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to go in reverse for a moment and just remember when the Housing Strategy Committee first came together. And prior to that, in the earlier days, it was often said, no, housing is not a city problem, it's a regional issue. And it was kind of dismissed. And it's, for me, wonderful to see how the city has stepped up to the plate and come up with, first of all, the Housing for All strategy, and now the action that's come out of that report. So I want to commend staff for the accomplishments they've had over the past couple years, and to see the action plan being taken seriously and being worked on. And I know there's a long way to go, and not just at the city level, but at the regional level, and of course the other levels of government, and the support that is going to be needed to solve this horrific problem that we have, especially of homelessness and the affordable housing waiting list. And I know the city cannot solve all those problems, but I'm very happy to be on a city council that has taken these steps and is moving forward with them. So yeah, keep up the good work, and look forward to the next report. And I think it's promising. I don't think we're there yet, but it's good to see that things are happening. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Marsh. And I echo the comments that we've heard already. And I think, maybe while building affordable housing is not the city's responsibility or managing it, I think we have done so much to make things happen. And just, Andrew and everybody that has advocated and worked together with other agencies, how we've donated land for the YWCA supportive housing, the work we've done with One Roof, the work that we continue to do. I think we're doing everything in our manner to make things happen and to work with all levels of government. It's been really exciting to see the cooperation, and just like everything else, when we invest, other levels of government invest, and we get things done. So let's keep moving forward on this and continue this great work. But it's been really exciting to see this, and this report shows the progress and where we're going. It's really, really heartwarming. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Ioannidis.
Thanks, Chair Marsh. Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate some of what Councillor Schneider has said, and the amount of good work that we've done as a city. And traditionally, it hasn't been part of our portfolio, and to see everything turn around over the last 3 or 4 years. In fact, it's been ongoing for quite some time prior. In particular, when we had the start of the task force and all that stuff. So that was like 3-4 years ago, and that was an implementation. They were been in discussions for quite some time. So, when you have an organization that's not built to service certain criteria, it takes time. And I think we've gotten there, even though unfortunately the need has gotten greater. So that's to me is not a remiss for me to moving forward.
Absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out. Councillor Michaud.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. Most has already been said. I just want to thank Andrew and the team and the staff for the report and for doing such tremendous work over the past, as Councillor Ioannidis said, 3 or 4 years. Homelessness has been a long time accelerating, and I think it almost reached a peak. And I do think that the work that you've done has certainly not leveled it off, but we're seeing some real goals gained here. And I also want to comment on the community as a whole, because I don't think a lot of these things would have happened without our community partners and our community builders, not just government and municipal, federal, provincial, but it takes the community as well to make these changes. So congratulations, Andrew, you did a great job.
Yeah, and I'll just make a few comments of my own. it's not every day that the City of Kitchener has 2 discussion items that both happen to be award-winning reports. And here we are, no big deal. We've got all this amazing report, Housing for All, that really deserves the accolades that it has received, and it's really shown to see that we are a leader here in this space. And so again, thank you so much to staff who've made this happen for us. And also I want to say that I'm looking forward to seeing the $2 million fund that we set aside at budget time. I know that that's coming shortly. And so, we have housing providers that are looking for development charge relief or exemption. And so I think that will be put to use quickly once we are able to use it as a tool. So that's those are my comments. And with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor? All right, that carries unanimously as well. Thank you so much to all who have sat with us today in this hour and 45-minute meeting. And that concludes our meeting today. And we'll see you all again at 6 o'clock.